A great day. Well, thank you for joining us for Family Forum 3, the Army Senior Leader Town Hall. Whether you are here in the audience or watching online, thank you for joining us. At this time, I would like to recognize our Family Forum 3 sponsor, the Wounded Warrior Project. The support the Wounded Warrior Project provides to our service members and their families is truly, truly appreciated. Representing the Wounded Warrior Project today is Jose Ramus, Ryan Cools, Alex Morosky, and Anne-Marie McLean. Thank you, Wounded Warrior Project. I would now like to recognize and bring up to the stage the 2021 AUSA Volunteer Family of the Year, the Dixon family. First Sergeant Dixon and his wife Tawny and 15-month-old son Cameron spend hundreds of hours volunteering and giving back to the military community each year. In the past 2 years alone, First Sergeant Dixon volunteered more than 350 hours and Tawny more than 600. First Sergeant Dixon shares his love for fishing through a Facebook outreach group for veterans, which he founded, that provides support to wounded warriors. Tawny has volunteered to organize canned food drives and initiated the Junior Paratrooper of the Year Dependent Award. This award recognizes high school dependents of the 82nd Airborne Soldiers for their volunteer work. She also served as the Soldier and Family Readiness Group leader. Thank you. The Dixons were named the 2021 North Carolina Family of the Year and the 2020 Fort Bragg Family of the Year. It is with sincere gratitude that the AUSA Family Readiness Directorate and the Volunteer Family of the Year program sponsor, Veterans United Home Loans, presents you with our token of appreciation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both for being such a great
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Oh yeah, no, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dixon family, for your outstanding leadership, your generosity and commitment to the military community. You are truly great role models. Thank you. How inspiring. Next, I would like to introduce our moderator, Lieutenant General Jason Evans, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Installations G9. Lieutenant General Evans is the Principal Advisor to Army Senior Leaders on installation policy, plans and resources, which include housing, childcare, and other soldier and family programs for all components. Installation armories and reserve centers serve as the Army's foundation and support for the readiness and well-being of our soldiers, civilians, families, and soldiers for life. Sir, thank you for agreeing to moderate this town hall, and welcome Lieutenant General Evans. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. Whew, man, I can get that off. Before we begin, I would like to thank AUSA and particularly recognize Holly for all the hard work you've done this week with the family forums. Thank you for being such a great partner and an advocate for our soldiers and families. It's great to be back in person, everybody. Yes? I'm honored to be the moderator for this event, for this Army Senior Leader Town Hall. Members, family members, be they spouses, children, parents, or siblings, are the strength of our soldiers. They stand side by side with them, providing comfort, support, and unconditional love. They play an important part in mission readiness. The Army is committed to providing the care, support, and services necessary to enable their self-reliance and ensure a ready Army. At this time, please give a warm welcome to our Army senior leaders. Please be seated. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please be seated, sir. Ma'am. First, I would like to introduce the Honorable Christine E. Wormuth, the 25th Secretary of the Army. Honorable Wormuth is a senior official within the Department of Defense for all matters relating to the United States Army and is an ardent supporter of our soldiers and their families and their quality of life. The 40th Chief of Staff of the Army, James McConville. General James McConville is also here to share his insights on his efforts to improve quality life programs for the Army. Maria can't be with us here today because she is helping care for their new grandson. Chief, congratulations. The Chief also has 3 children who serve in the Army and a son-in-law who also serves. Finally, the 16th Sergeant Major of the Army, SMA Michael Grinston, with nearly 34 years of dedicated service, holding every enlisted leadership position, brings his perspective on soldier and family support and its direct influence on Army readiness. SMA Grinston, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Wormuth will provide her opening remarks at this time.
Okay. I'm afraid of microphones now after what happened at my speech, so I don't want to touch anything. But thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. This is the first AUSA that I've been to in many years, so I'm delighted to be back. It's terrific to have everyone back in person, and I hope next year we'll be able to be back even bigger and without masks if everything goes well. But I'm very excited to have the opportunity to hear from you all about what challenges you have, what concerns you have. I've had the opportunity in the 4 months that I've been secretary to visit a number of Army installations and units. I try usually to get out and call an audible, as my staff knows. If I see a family person, walking into a house or into off-post housing, I usually try to run up and ask how things are working, what's not working. I've done sensing sessions with soldiers and heard about some of the family-related concerns. But this is a terrific opportunity for me to really hear directly from you all about what's on your mind. So I look forward to the opportunity to talk with you. Thanks very much.
Chief?
Well, thank you. And, we talk about people first, and it's not soldiers first, it's people's first, because it recognizes the importance of families. And when you think about our Army, 89% of our sergeants and above have families. So all our leaders, a majority of leaders have families, and that's why families are so important. We talk about being in a war for talent. And, if we want to retain soldiers, we have to retain their families. And I've got a special appreciation for what family members and spouses and parents go through, after watching my kids deploy. And, the thing I learned is, when you're in combat, you know when to worry. But when you're a family member, you worry all the time. And, my oldest son was just at HKIA in Kabul during, the drawdown. And, again, that was a very stressing time for many. And I kind of developed a certain level of empathy that I probably did not have before, knowing what it means to have someone that you really think highly of in some pretty serious danger. And so you all do that every single day. We are competing for talent, and that's why when we talk about people being the number one priority, that's why the quality of life initiatives the Secretary has approved is so important, because we want to take care of families. So we don't get it right all the time, but we have all these experts here, and this is my third forum here with the families, and we really appreciate your questions, your feedback, and some of these things we'll fix right away. Some things are going to take some time, so thanks for coming out, and we look forward to your questions.
SMA?
First of all, I'd like to just say a special thank you to all the spouses in the crowd. I just think about what happened in the last 18 months. It is really good to be back here. But as I look and I went throughout the travels, and we were still traveling in COVID, I was still amazed at what the spouses did to help the family members and and the soldier for everything that we did. And I look at it and it's like, well, what was it? It made it even harder, COVID did. It's like the spouses were at home, and then, I was that bad soldier. It's like, okay, dear, I'm off to work. And she's like, well, who's going to take care of the kids while they're going to school? I'm not a teacher. I'm like, good luck with that. So I did not do that. You know that, right? Everybody that knows me goes, yes, you did. But, spouses were still working from home and having to take care of the kids at home when they were expecting to go to school. And then you still worked. And then you supported your crazy husband or soldier going wherever they needed to go. And then I really did have a family forum at Fort Bragg. And imagine, during all the COVID and the hurricanes and the floods, we did a no-notice deployment 3 times with the 82nd in the last 18 months during COVID. And at behind that soldier in every case was a spouse and a family member supporting their soldier. And when I talked to those family members at Fort Bragg, and they were just so proud of their service member. And I just want to say on behalf of the Chief of Staff and the Secretary that it really made me proud to be your Sergeant Major of the Army, and is proud to be here with you today. And I will challenge you, and they're going to hate me for this. We are so excited for really hard, difficult questions. I know, I'm going to be fired right after this. But I do this at every family forum. I say, really, when you bring us hard, difficult things, that's what we do. The easy stuff is done, if a private or a sergeant or the company battery troop commander can handle it, then why would you need the Chief of Staff of the Army to do it? Or the Secretary. So sometimes when I do ask for those challenging things, that's what makes our Army great. We may not have the answers, but we take those hard, difficult questions on, and we don't forget about them. And we've had those at these family forums. So if I'm fired tomorrow, your questions were too hard. Thank you.
Okay, now it's time to take some questions from the audience. You can either put your question on the card, the blank card that's in the seat next to you or the seat that you sat in, or you can raise your hand and they will bring a microphone to you. I would just ask that you keep your questions concise so that we can address as many questions as possible. We also have people that are live streaming. We'll take questions from them, and also we have some questions that will come from the overflow room. We have a first question. Yes, ma'am.
So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. I am a military spouse of almost 26 years next month. This is my soldier of 28 years, still serving. And we are also the parents of an adult 21-year-old son that is incapacitated adult. We are his legal guardian. And we also have a 19-year-old adult daughter who's off at Auburn. And this is my question to the audience, or actually to the audience. Some of you may understand this, but so we recently, because our son became 21, had to go through the new process of making him a dependent after the age of 21 for his ID card. We have been his legal guardians by court ordered since he was 18. When we went to get a new ID card for him when he was 19, I thought I would just take my court order in, and that would make him a permanent dependent. That's not the case. So until he was 21, we were covered, became 21, and then we were told not only do you have to file to prove again he's disabled permanently, but we also had to prove that we were 51% financially responsible for him. Now, the Court of Virginia said we are 100% responsible for him until either he dies or we die. But the Department of Defense says that we have to prove this 51% on top of everything else. It's a very subjective system. I know many families, besides ourselves, that have to file this every 4 years. But the paperwork always will say that he is permanently disabled. So my question would be helpful as we want to continue serving at 28 years and maybe going forward so that we can take our son to another duty station, is that 51% rule can be removed and that the dependent that is permanently disabled can stay with us and follow us as we continue to serve. I would love to share more how that process works. It is a subjective process. Many families hit hurdles along the way, and my husband just recently, we got the paperwork qualifying us, so reason we could take our ball and run, but the truth is we want to change this for the greater good of the service and keep these old soldiers like my husband continuing to be able to serve so that we don't have to retire because we can't keep our dependent child with us. Thank you.
So let me start by saying, first of all, thank you both for your service under clearly, some challenging circumstances, and very much appreciate that. And I'm sure that the last thing that you need, frankly, is to be dealing with all of these additional paperwork requirements every few years. I actually have a friend who is in the Army now, retired, but it sounds like has a somewhat similar situation with his oldest child who's severely autistic, and I know went through that same kind of challenge when his daughter turned 21. I think I would ask General Evans, unless the chief can add, I think we would want to help you with one of our subject matter experts to dig into the specific issues, since it sounds like it involves a legal issue, but certainly that's something I think we'd like to work with you on.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we do have, between Scott Dingle, mRNA, and the G1.
We have the TJAC here too.
What's
as
that?
well. The TJAC is here too, sir.
And the TJAC. So there's
Sharon
4
Carwell.
people here that all work for us. And no, this is a great question though, because these are how we solve problems. And in fact, thank you for bringing that up, because we want to take care of you. We want to take care of your family. And what we need to do is huddle after this thing, get your name, get you guys get a hold of that, get the thing, and then let's work it around. And this becomes. It's either, hopefully it's policy. If it's law, then we got to get the law changed. Laws are hard to change. Policy is much easier to change. But we never get these type things unless people like you ask that question. And if you can see, we just said 4 people. These are major type that have a piece of this. And that's why we've got to take that thing. And then, first of all, fix it for you. But second of all, fix it for the entire Army so we don't need to do that. So who's going to take the lead? Who's got between our 3 stars here? Who wants to? I'm going to pin the rose.
Yeah, they're all pointing at each other, so
Okay,
y'all
here's the
just
deal.
do that.
The G1 has put his thumb up. He will do the coordination. He will get with you, and he will get it to us. So, but thanks for the question. And we're not only going to solve for you, but there's other people out here that have a similar situation. And those are the type of questions that are really helpful for us. And we're taking a hard look at EFMP. We know, in fact, I just went through a little case with myself on a family member. Another family member, but we get those type cases, and they're very nuanced, and we're very bureaucratic. But we got to figure out, at the end of the day, we got to get them to the right level, and we just got to kind of move our way through that so we can take care of families. And
Yeah.
you want to talk real quickly on EFMP?
Yeah, just on EFMP, I've made it a point every camp posting station I go to on Exceptional Family Member Program and talk to these cases. This isn't the first time, and that we've heard unique cases where those things aren't helpful. And it's what we usually find out, it's a Department of Defense rule on this 51%, and that's why it's good for us to take those on. So I guess the really hard part, what I found was, I've actually heard both sides. One of them says, I don't ever want to be an EFMP, take it off. And then you get the exact opposite of, why do I have to go through this paperwork again? It's not going to go away. So that's the struggle, is that some people don't want it to be in there, and then some people say, get it out, why am I having to fill out the paperwork? We are piloting this month, and Dee can help me out with, we're going to have an electronic EFMP system. So you can go in, and it's like, why do I have to do the paperwork over and over and over? It should be electronic. You should be able to just kind of click a button and then go and do that, and that's what we're working on. I'm not sure if that's going to go live. It's piloting right now, is that?
Yes, it's piloting now.
Yeah, and then
Spring of 22, Sergeant Major.
there you go, the spring of 22. So that will help. It may not help with the 51%, but it'll actually at least help with, why do I have to go and show you this paperwork again? And that's what I heard a lot of. So that's what we're working on with the electronic EFMP program, which is a little different. As 2 years ago, we talked about EFMP and me. And that is not it. That wasn't the final solution. So we're working on a new system.
Any questions? Okay, I got no questions from the audience. Have a Facebook question here. Is there opportunity for soldiers to waive getting the COVID-19 vaccine?
I'm happy to speak to that. So first of all, I would say the reason that the department has mandated the vaccine for the entire military is because it's a health, safety, and readiness issue. You know, we have safe, effective vaccines that can protect our soldiers, their family members, our Department of Army civilians and contractors from COVID. And I'm sad to say that the number of notices that I've gotten in the last few months of soldiers or dependents or DA civilians who have passed away from COVID has been increasing markedly. So this is really a health and safety issue. We do have the soldiers can certainly apply for medical or religious exemptions, and those are, you know, evaluated by our Surgeon General and other senior Army leaders. Those are considered. We also have, you know, counselors and people who can speak to if individual soldiers or family members have concerns about the safety of the vaccine. We have resources and people who can talk people through that, but there is an exemption process that soldiers can apply to.
And, you know, for the active soldiers, right, we're about 91% right now. So people are getting the vaccinations. You know, the Guard and Reserve is going to take a little longer to do that, but the dates are coming up. And, you know, we're providing, as the Secretary said, medical expertise for those who have concerns about their health and safety, and we can do that. But I echo what the Secretary said. I'm just really concerned about the impact it's having on our soldiers. You know, I'd say early on we weren't seeing soldiers, you know, quite frankly, get really sick and die. We are. On the civilian, Department of the Army civilian side, it really bothers me because we are losing a good amount of Department of the Army civilians. You know, we're seeing people that, you know, I lost a former battalion commander, you know, that had children and everything else. So, you know, we want people to get it. We think it's safe. We want people to be, it's safe for themselves. It's safe for their buddies. If they're going to deploy, they got to be able to do that. And, you know, we're seeing kids get it too, which is really kind of starting to bother me is, you know, kids are getting sick. And, you know, so as far as an approach, we're giving people a chance to get all the information they need, to get the medical expert they need. But there is a legal order from the Secretary of Defense, and, you know, we're going to have to go ahead and execute that. But we're giving people time to work through all the information they need to do it, you know, to their satisfaction. Does that make anything?
Just really quickly, is Soldier says that, you know, well, you know, we didn't have it before, and, you know, I deployed, and, you know, we were sending people, you know, forward deployed while we had COVID going on. And they said, well, Sergeant Major, you know, I deployed then, and what's the big deal? And imagine in the world that I had a body armor. Well, before I didn't have the body armor. But then all of a sudden I got this new body armor, and I said, well, I'm not going to give it to you. But you're still going to deploy. I mean, I know everybody's like, wow. Imagine that we had it, and it was there, and I could protect you. It may not, you know, wrap around you and save every piece of your body, of your life, but what if I had it and had the opportunity to issue you that body armor before you deployed? Would you do it? Would you do it? Would you tell everybody you got to wear it? Would you make them do it? That's kind of how I look at the vaccine. I would say absolutely. And you would never question the Secretary or the Chief to tell you that you got to wear that body armor, because that's how we are. That's kind of how I look at it. There's absolutely an ETP. But from my perspective, I want to make our soldiers, our family members, our DA civilians as safe as we could be. And I think this is the way to do it.
Okay. Another question? You have a question? Okay.
Right here, General.
There we go.
All right, gentlemen, ma'am. So I'm the garrison commander at Fort Irwin, Jason Clark. So my question is, with a focus on family resiliency, there's a growing concern with increased access to marijuana and other drugs at many installations. This affects our readiness with increased soldiers testing positive for drugs, water supplies, and environmental concerns of chemicals being put in our water tables, and energy resiliency and marijuana farms that take an exorbitant amount of water to grow. How is the DoD and the Army leadership working with state and federal legislators to address these concerns? Thanks.
Wow,
Okay.
this is a complicated one.
I guess we said hard questions right there. And I will defer to the Secretary of the Army.
I've never inhaled. Let me just be very clear. And that's actually true, and I say that to my twin daughters who are college students. Out frankly in California, which is a state obviously where marijuana is legalized, and I think, I don't know the exact number of states now in the United States that have legalized marijuana, but I think it's over 30, maybe it's getting close to 40. So I think the kinds of challenges you're raising are things that we really have to grapple with and have not sorted our way through yet, frankly. There is not, and we still have the same drug testing policies in place that we've had in place for many years. But I think what we're seeing, at least from a recruiting standpoint, for example, and that's just one small sort of dimension of the question that you raised, we're seeing that sort of run into the fact that, many, many, many young Americans are growing up in states where pot is legal. So, I think we're going to have to grapple with that in a more comprehensive way than we have to date. And we certainly, to my knowledge, we may have some of our subject matter experts here. I don't think we've grappled at all yet with the things that you're raising, such as, for example, the draw that marijuana farms may have on resources. We know water is scarce in states like California and Colorado. So I think that's an area we have work to do. I don't know if we have any of our experts who know more about that than I do, but if so, we should give them the floor.
Hey, sir, so that people can hear you online.
Yeah, you might want to give him a mic, yeah.
Not from the legal perspective, but a great point, and from a occupational environmental health position, I need to make sure that we link with you so we can start monitoring from, again, the occupational environmental health hazard perspective to make sure we are testing, looking at that. But we'll work and get with the Army staff also from the policy perspective to work with it.
Yeah, because there's about three parts to your question, really, when you ask it. First of all, we're going to have people that are going to be using marijuana. It's just, and when you look at, so what the question becomes, what are the rules? Prior use, is that okay? Within 30 days of showing up at the, at MEPS and you come up hot at MEPS, is that okay? And once you get on active duty, when does it, become not okay? And we're going to have to deal with that. I think that's a problem with the use of marijuana. We got to figure that one out. The second thing, which I think you kind of bring up, is, people, and I've been out to NTC, so I think I know what you're talking about, is, they're just growing it out there. You want to throw climate change in, and you throw in, the desertification that's going on at places like NTC, where water is very, very short. So who gets access to your water? If they kind of suck it all out, so they're growing, pot with it, you're left in a very difficult situation. So to me, that's more of an installation question and legal question. So who can take that one on? That's the second part.
So we'll take it as part of the environmental and work with AMC.
You got the environment?
Yeah, and we got the environmental piece.
You can take that one on? Okay, so you got that one? Who's going to take the one on, I guess, the recruiting one? Who's got the recruiting one?
That would be the TRADOC commander.
Oh, there we go, TRADOC. We got, okay, good.
Who was just telling us about this.
See, I'm just trying. Well, here's my role. I just want to make sure it's not me. That's how I look at it. I'm trying to get this thing rolling downhill. So the buck will stop here, but I'm passing the buck to the right person. Okay, I get it.
All right, any more questions from the audience? Do we have a hand? Okay. We're going to go to a Facebook question from Sabrina. Are there any efforts being made to improve response to domestic violence and support for domestic violence victims?
This is a great question. It's frankly a sad question that we have to be talking about it, but I think it's fair to say that Chief and I and the SMA are very concerned about domestic violence right now. There have been some prominent cases, and I think this is something that we're, the pandemic, the isolation of the pandemic, a lot of the experiences, the high op tempo that our folks have experienced, I think really show that we need to be focused on this. And, really I think what we're trying to do here is two big pieces. First of all, the prevention side. I mean, really ideally what we'd like to do is catch families that are having problems and support them before before violence happens. And that's really what we're trying to get at things like This is my squad, making sure that our leaders are looking and promoting a healthy command climate, programs like the Strong Bonds programs that we have, offering things like financial readiness counseling, that sometimes the financial concerns can be a stressor in families. So we're going to be continuing to focus on that side of things, but also making sure that if there is a situation where violence has occurred in the home, we're providing resources to the victims and making sure that cases are investigated and that people are held accountable. And our TJAGs and judge advocates, have a lot of experience in that area. CID obviously is very experienced, and I think we have done a good job in past cases that I'm familiar with of rectifying the situation, separating people, and making sure that a victim's supported.
Ma'am, Karen Carlisle from TJAG has some comments to add.
Ma'am, if I could just add on, ooh, that's loud. Since December of 2020, domestic violence victims are eligible for SVC services, and so Special Victims Counsel. So that's a new program, ma'am, since you've come on. And then also our legal assistance offices have also been representing our domestic violence victims as well. So just wanted to make sure that those services were out there.
Yeah, there's some things which we're trying to do, at least in the Army. And this takes time, and, the Secretary talked about this is my squad, but, the idea of building, these cohesive teams at every single level and really giving people access or feeling that they can trust someone they can go to, whether it's sexual harassment, sexual assault, whether it's suicides or behavioral health issues or it's domestic abuse type things. It's like, who does that person go to? Who do they trust that they can call? Because a lot of times, what will happen is they don't know who they can go to. And, and ideally we want them to go to people that when it's really early on. We have programs, we certainly have family advocacy programs, we have strong bonds and program. We want strong bonds to really be for weak bonds, not for strong bonds. We want to try to identify those who need help. But how do we build organizations where a spouse feels comfortable going to somebody in the military or someplace where they can get help, and where a spouse feels comfortable that if he or she says something that the person maybe not going to lose their job or they're not going to be cast out. There's just a lot of challenges that I see. A spouse doesn't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything. It'll hurt his job or hurt her job, or if something happens, I have no place to go and know what to do, so they're willing to stay in a relationship that they probably shouldn't be. And quite frankly, we've had some really bad cases over the last year, two in particular, that we want to try to get in front of. So as we move forward in this is what we're trying to get to, is a safe place where when people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, they can get help and they can get advocacy and they can get the problem fixed. Is that Major?
Yeah. First of all, there's no room for domestic violence in our military. And I'll address it from two perspectives, leadership and policy. That's what we're talking about. You got to know your squad. If I say, hey, I want to come over, let's meet your wife, and you're like, no, you can't meet my wife. Or, that'd be odd, oh, I'd like to meet your spouse. No, you can't. Oh, really? So that's knowing the people that are right next to you, asking those simple questions. We've been talking about this for 2 years, that it really does start with leadership and looking people in the eye and saying, hey, how's it going? If people don't make eye contact in the U.S., that's a sign that maybe you have to be able to notice that something is going on. You may not know what's going on, but I'd ask every leader in the Army to go out there and just talk to your people, their families. And if they say no, it's like, why is that? Good news, I'm not your first sergeant. I was like, hey, I'm coming over. We'll see what day. So legal, we don't need a legal thing on that. Good. So that's number one. That's leadership. Number two, policy. We did look at this. We said there was an issue because maybe a family member who's going through domestic violence. So our rules were about 2 years ago. If I got separated, I got no money. I know, not legally. If you were divorced, or I had to, I could give you BAH or something like that. That was it. But there was nothing if I separated and I wasn't going anything other than BAH. It's like, well, I live in housing. I don't I don't get BAH because I already have housing. So how am I willing to say to my family member, this person is abusing me, they're going to cut off the money? I can't feed myself or my children. How do I do that? So that was one of the policies changed. I think it was 20% of the pay, you have to, legal, they're all going, yep, you got it right, Sergeant Major. So we said, hey, if you're going through something, not just the BAH, that you will take care of the money for your family, so you can speak up and say, hey, I'm having a problem. Don't use, if you're having issues and you can't get the money, we're going to make sure. And that's why we changed one of the policies. I think that was last year or in the last 2 years, and legal or just saying something like that. So that's the policy perspective to look at it, so we could actually do better with domestic violence.
Complimentary, ma'am, to the prevention space that you mentioned. Chief, we've also noticed, and Sabrina, great question, that domestic violence also usually does not stand by itself. So from that, we've seen sexual assault, sexual harassment as well, often drinking issues, alcohol as well. So part of our prevention model, which, sir, your task force is looking at, is way far left. Can we give a healthy marriage class? Can we give a financial planning class that hopefully you won't have to measure negative 3, 4 months or 3 years down the line? So that's the trajectory we're moving on now. Thank you.
Question.
Thank you. My name is Ronna Trent. I'm a retired registered dietitian after serving 20 years in the Army, and my question is about food, actually, and along that same lines of stability and stressors to the family from the last question. For most of my 20-year career, we talked about obesity, and that was the battle I was fighting and trying to frame it for leaders in terms of a readiness issue, right? And frankly, what it's doing to our country as a whole in readiness. But in the last 2 to 3 years, it's really been about food insecurity. And we have a lot of our MSO and VSO partners that have done actually very good research with the USDA surveys that have actually shown that 1 out of every 6 soldiers or households that have soldiers in them are now affected by food insecurity in this country, in the United States today. So my question is, or my concern really is, when I have talked to my peers, retired lieutenant colonels, my husband and myself, and I say to them, I say, think back. When did you think about food for your soldiers beyond Thanksgiving and Christmas baskets and things like that? And they said, well, if we thought about it, we turned them over to the sergeant major, or we turned them over to AER, or something like that. But when I talk to leaders today and I ask about that, I'm getting the same answers. So my question for the group up here is, what are we doing differently to frame food insecurity differently and to think about it holistically in terms of the answers that we've just given about stressors on the family and the downstream effects on that include violence and whatnot too? Thank you.
Madam Secretary, you want me to go? Yeah, there you go.
Have at it.
Yeah, jump on the. That's actually it's a good question. We talked about this in the survey that came out. I did ask, a survey, and I'm not going to question the survey. It was a small sampling, but the food insecurity, I really looked at it from a different perspective of, do we pay our service members enough to support their families? I mean, yes or no? So, because then we're not going to address the proper question. So we have added, and we're not there yet, especially on the enlisted, because most of, if you ask any soldier, E1, 3, 4, even the ones in the live in the barracks said, hey, did you worry about food? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, we got a dining facility. So, so those were some of the questions. So it really led me to believe is, it's a question of, are we getting paid properly? And if we are, then what are we doing with our money? And that's where we've implemented financial training. I really like to say, yes, we've been doing this for 200 years for enlisted. We have not. At the basic leader course, we have implemented financial training at the basic leader course, and we're going to go all the way up, and TRADOC has got the lead, and we're going to teach classes on how to manage your money all the way up to the Sergeant Major's Academy, because we got the blended retirement. So the 2 parts of it is, fundamentally, we have the baseline study of what the services get paid. And if that isn't appropriate, that's a different problem. The other piece of that is how to manage your money. Did you get a car? Did you get this really nice car and a really nice boat and a motorcycle and I can't feed my family. And I'm not saying that's what's going on. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is we have to manage the money that we have, and then we have to look at it in a perspective, are we getting paid? And then the QRMC, I think, was what the quadrennial defense review on military compensation comes around every 2 years to look at, do we get paid? And the last 2 years, and that's a DOD, says, yep, we're, that's good. Every pay's going great. We do have some proposals to relook at that, and we're not ready to roll that out. But we are working with, I'm working with the SEAC and DOD to see, do we have compensation right? But on the left of that, can we manage our money appropriately? And then the third is, we do not want any family in the United States Army to go hungry without food. We will get you food. I promise. You could, right here, right now, turn them over to the Sergeant Major. We talked to DECA, and they said, yep, we donate, food all the time to food banks. And you're right, AER is there to help. We have to know you need the help. We're not going to stand by and let our families go in need. We have plenty of programs that will help and make sure that our families are fed.
I just kind of add on the food. I think people are looking at food very, very differently than we ever had before. You're a registered dietitian. I married one. It's better than a gym pass, trust me. But I think what I think with the young people, the people that we're getting in General Funk and what they're doing at TRADOC with holistic health and fitness is we're putting dietitians in the brigades. So they're going to have that type of thing. We think it's that important, not just the fact you have food available, but it's really what type of food are you eating, and it has physical and mental ramifications. So the fact that, first of all, people have to have food, but they got to be eating the right type of food. And you talk about obesity and everything else, and those who study it, and you know a lot more about than me, and the folks that are actually do that stuff for a living, is food's one of the most important things. What you eat when it comes to weight and everything else, and muscle and doing all those type things is really important. So that's part of our holistic health and fitness program that we're putting into every single unit. So we're really getting the experts to help us with that, and I think that's the way forward. But as Sergeant Major said, we're not going to have any soldiers or families that are going without food. And when people ask us, because they'll ask me, because the first question that we get asked is, what are we going to do about it? Well, do we raise the pay, which is one way to do it, or is the pay sufficient if you don't have debt, if you're not, spending your money in other places, and, you may not, at least when I grew up from humble roots, so we didn't drive BMWs and Mercedes in my household, and so we just have to take a look and make sure they have an adequate amount of money. And if they don't, for certain reasons, then we can help them with that too. But it bothers me because I've heard about this, as we said, and we're going to make sure, just like if someone's not getting food and they can't, get help, then come to me, the Sergeant Major. We're not going to let any Army families go hungry, at least as long as I'm the Chief at Sergeant Major.
Yes, sir. I do want to alibi one is because you brought up a good point that I didn't realize. What we did in the study too, when we look at it, it's a lot cheaper to make the food in your home. And that's what's important too about what you do, is that not only can you save money, well, it's not just about what you buy, it's where are you buying your food. If you're buying your food and making it at home, it costs less if you're eating out more. So that's what that food has a lot to do with it. Where you get it, how you prepare it is just not a nutritional value. It also saves you a lot of money if you say, yeah, I'm doing this, but that costs twice as much if you do that and you eat out more. So that's why we're really trying to look at it from holistic health.
Next question, Krista, right here in the front.
And any questions about AER, you're right there.
Yeah.
So, you can't hide behind the mat.
I can talk loud enough. That's part of it. One of the things, and I'll speak, I guess, from my name's Krista Anderson. I'm not only a Gold Star spouse, but the Army Emergency Relief Military Spouse Ambassador. And actually, my husband's retiring, so I think I've checked a lot of the marks off throughout this journey. But one of the things that we see is that stigma of our service members and their families asking for help. And so at AAR, one of the things that I have kind of sat back and looked at is other organizations that are outside of AAR are offering very similar assistance, and our soldiers and families are going to them instead of coming to AAR I'm not really sure why. But I think a lot of it has to do with the stigma, because some of the myths that are out there are, if I apply for an AER loan, I'm going to lose my security clearance, or, I'm going to have my commander is going to come down on me hard if I apply for a loan or I get a grant. And so some of our partners have looked at I guess they're calling it economic insecurity rather than food insecurity now. And so how do we put faith in our soldiers and their families that they can come to AER and they can get as General Mason says, a hand up instead of a hand out, and really be empowered to set up their family for a successful, that could be General Mason kicking something over in the back right now.
Overflow room.
So empower them to really set their family up for financial success in the future.
I'll lead off if anybody wants to chime in too. It's always great to see you. AER, that's why we changed. At one point we said, well, the whole chain of command has to know about where you're getting this loan. And all the division sergeant majors were up in a roar, and we said, no. Company battery troop level can approve, I think it's $1,000 right there. Just go help, they sign it, and it's done. So we didn't want to go outside. What we also found is that they're still going outside the chain of command. So you know what AER did? We said, well, we'll pay off those loans for them. So your Army Emergency Relief found that some soldiers didn't want to go, and we found those organizations, and AER said, okay, that's a military family, we'll pay it off. So the Army Emergency Relief is going to do everything that they can to help our soldiers do that, and that's a true statement. That I'm not making that up. So. But we really do. We've tried everything. We still need to have somebody that signs off on the paperwork that says, yes, you're going to get a loan or a grant, or what that looks like. We tried to push that down to the lowest level so you don't have to go to the battalion commander or somewhere else. So I agree. We can see the stigma of, I don't want to go to behavioral health. I don't want to do this. It's not true. Ask if you need help. That's the whole point, that everybody needs help. The sergeant major of the Army needs help. If I do, I got my squad, and I'll ask them, like, Chief, I need to do this. Every time I said, I can't be at this, I'm going to go to my daughter's something, you know what he says? Sure. There was never, oh, well, if you have to, Sergeant Major. That was never there. And it's the same thing when our soldiers say they need your help. Don't go, oh, if you have to, or anything like that. Just say, okay. And then, what he'd be better is I'll go with you. I'll take you to wherever you need to go. I'll take you to AER. I'm not going to judge you. I'm going to go with you to make sure we get you what you need. And until we do that more, I think there may be, but you're not going to lose your security clearance if you go seek behavioral health. It's just not going to, if you do something really bad, and then you go to behavioral health, yes, you'll lose your clearance for that. But all these other things, there is this stigma about asking for help, and I'd ask us to, as much as we can, for every leader, spouse, family member, DA civilian, is to say it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to seek help. If you need help with loans, we're going to try to do the best we can. So thank you.
Okay.
I was just going to add to that, Krista. I think the specific question you raised does speak to the broader challenge of stigma across the board for asking for help, whether it relates to food insecurity or whether it relates to behavioral health, people who are, struggling and perhaps having suicidal ideations. We really do have to work, I think, every day at all levels to message that it is strength, not weakness, to ask for help, and to, when someone asks for help, to reflect that back to them, to walk that walk, not just talk that talk, because I think that we do have resources available, but they can only help when people avail themselves of them. And I think the myths that are out there around what might happen if you seek help are just that, myths in a lot of cases. And I think we really need to redouble our messaging to try to bust those myths so that people aren't afraid to ask for help when they need it.
Okay, I'm accumulating Facebook questions, so I'll take a couple of those and then come back to the audience. This question is from Holly Duncan. Are you aware of the families being affected by autism care demonstration? Many beneficiaries have had their ABA, applied behavioral analysis, therapy hours cut in half, or even worse, have lost services. I would welcome the opportunity to brief leadership on how families are being affected.
I was just going to say, I think we would certainly welcome getting briefed on how it's affecting Ms. Duncan specifically. And I know, autism is a challenge that a lot of families have. Again, I have good friends who have children with autism or who are on the spectrum and know the complexities that can come with that. We have a challenge with behavioral health resources generally. The whole country is struggling with that, and I think, unfortunately, we are feeling that impact as well, but certainly want to try to work with families to make sure they have the resources that they need. And I think I would go to General Dingle to sort of maybe speak specifically to some of the autism-related programs or resources we have.
I'm going to turn, that was on Facebook. So absolutely, I welcome also the opportunity to hear from her, the briefing in relation to her specific case. In addition to that, as we work with TRICARE, the DHA, on services provided, this is one of those hot topics that are coming up. And as we go through the decision-making processes on the type of care and where we're providing that, this would be a welcomed opportunity for us to hear as we establish policy working with the Defense Health Agency. Colonel Burnett, anything you want to add to that?
Okay, this is a MWR question.
I'm sorry, before you move on, will I be able to get her contact information?
I got it right
thank
here.
you.
Got you. Okay, MWR question from Brandon Roggenbauer. Some unit commanders have reluctant in supporting MWR, so most lower enlisted feel their commander's perception is that recreation detracts from the mission. The question I have is that, would soldiers be better served by programs like BOSS if they were staffed by professional civilian counterparts who are free from duty demands?
I think that's a good question, and probably not going to like my answer. I would say no. To me, it's about being a good leader. You're probably going to hear me say this a couple of times, but if your leader doesn't believe that you need some time to do recreation, I could put all the policy and everything in place, and the leader says, no, you're not going to do it. It's not going to solve the problem. We have programs like the Better Opportunity for Single Soldiers because we believe that recreation does help soldiers get out. There's another one. So I really put in, when we talk about building a cohesive team, how do you do that? And I said, well, where can I get some money? Like, Sergeant Major, the money's already there. It's like, where? There's better opportunity. It's DOD money. It's even better. Everyone likes other people's money. This comes from DOD to support the Better Opportunity for Single Soldiers to build a cohesive team. And one of those things that you can take all your soldiers out and do are life skills. It's a program that's funded already, and we did it at a former Big Red 1 division, not to be the name of that division. We took the soldiers out and went to K-State and the University of Kansas and said, can you teach our soldiers these life skills? And we had the money to do it. And wait a minute, but there's this other thing called Warrior Venture Quest. It's still there. There is still money, and this says, I can go out and fund a bike ride. It's called the Warrior Venture Quest, and those programs still exist. We just need to know that the program exists. We need to know where the money comes from, and then how do you get access to it? Because I double-checked, because I said, where do we have these funds that we could build cohesive teams? And it's not just, first of all, it is great training. Go out in the field, sleep in the rain, on the ground. Everybody should do it, right? Everybody wants to do it. Yes, spouses, yeah. I can't get my wife to do that. But that builds a cohesive team. But there's other ways in those MWR funds that are available right now that you can do that not just the Army, but DOD thought it was so important that they would fund these two programs to give you those recreation. So I think saying, okay, I'll put a person that's in charge of that in that installation, so it'll have emphasis on it. When General Funk says we're going to do these life skills at K-State and University of Kansas, then we do it. Without that, I would say that maybe we don't do it.
Okay. Yes, sir, in the back. What? Bringing a mic to you.
Oh, sir, hold on. I'll get you a mic. You want me to use the voice in the Army? Okay, thanks.
They can't hear you on the internet.
Yeah, the live streamers won't be able to hear you.
Okay, got it. So, given the focus on people first, disinformation, thank you, Secretary, and information advantage and threats to forced submission and families from disinformation, are we open to teaching and assisting soldiers and their families to protect themselves from disinformation by adversaries and other forms of predators?
That's a great question. And, I think the answer should be, if we're not already doing that, I would certainly be in favor of doing that. Coincidentally, prior to becoming secretary, I most recently worked at the RAND Corporation, and, they have a whole part of RAND that supports the Army directly, the Arroyo Center. But RAND actually did a fascinating study looking at, for the state of California, frankly, that was aimed at trying to help voters identify when they are being, targeted by disinformation campaigns. And it was very interesting because there are clear patterns, and you can definitely help individuals become more educated consumers of information. And particularly when we see our adversaries going out and trying to get the PII for our soldiers and their family members, there's a lot of information that's out there on the internet that we do not want our adversaries to be able to leverage to, potentially hold our soldiers and families at risk. So if we're not already, I'm still pretty new here, but if we're not already doing things to educate our soldiers and families about disinformation, I think we absolutely should, because it's important and it's a real part of the security environment that we're in now.
Okay. We'll go to also a good question from Facebook. This is from Christina Marie. Right now, the whole country is experiencing effects of labor shortage in the shipping industry. Does the Army have a plan for families, PCS and OCONUS, to receive their household goods in a timely manner? Is there a plan to help with compensation for those families if their household goods take up to 6 months to arrive? What is the big picture regarding how this all will impact the military overall?
Sounds like a perfect question
Dwayne,
for General.
You're going to say something before we go. Yeah, we've done a lot of work on permanent change of station moves, and there's been actually a lot of things done, from hiring additional people to make sure they work and all these other type things. And quite frankly, with COVID and people not working, we are in a very different situation than we were before. But we've done some things with temporary living expenses as far as giving people more time for that. We've done things with personally procured moves, going up to 100% to incentivize those type things. But we're still seeing people going overseas and some really problems. So, Dwayne, you're going to tell them how we're fixing all this stuff.
Yeah, sir, before we, the specificity that General Gamble will have will be amazing. We've talked about this several times. I do want to say specifically about OCONUS moves, because the personally procured move won't help you. So, yeah, I guess if you rent a boat. So overseas is Alaska, so I'll give you that one. But I think there is a little bit of skill in this. As we drew down a lot of forces overseas, we did lose some of the knowledge of what we do overseas versus CONUS. And I'd ask you to really dig in. So what's available overseas sometimes can help you in an overseas move. And I'll give you the example. And I'm not sure if we still do this. But the last time I moved to Germany, that we give you rental furniture for free. So it's a little bit of art in this, is saying, whereas the reverse was, I didn't get that. If I wanted furniture and my furniture didn't come, then I had to personally pay for that furniture when I came back from overseas. So the art in this sometimes is, again, know your soldiers, and if you don't know the answers, please ask. So somebody that's moved overseas, like, 6 or 7 times, that I ship my stuff early so that or when it's coming back, and then I use the rental furniture overseas so I don't have to use the rental furniture when I come back to Beconis. So I think there is some art, but we are in extraordinary times on delivery times, especially when you look at going overseas. And some of the programs just, if you don't have a little bit of art in the move of going overseas, it could cost you a lot of money. If you don't know that overseas they'll give you that furniture for free, and over the States you don't. So you could do something that wouldn't help you if you're doing an overseas move. And since I've moved a whole bunch of times overseas, I just wanted to throw that out. And now on the specifics on that, sir.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, Sergeant Major. So my name is Dwayne Gamble. I'm the Army G4. There's two things. First, to the question about what are we doing specifically for overseas moves. From start to finish, it's a little bit of an ecosystem, right? It's a process, and Sergeant Major of the Army alluded to this a little bit. So what we are doing is putting orders in the hands of soldiers much earlier than we've ever had before. So everybody knows that, you know, Gary Brito and HRC, the G1s of the world, the human resource managers cut the RFO, but it's the installations that cut the orders. And so under General Daly and General Gabriel's leadership, orders are in the hands of soldiers. We're shooting for 120 days so that we can put the demand signal on a very stressed industry. And we have Transcom with us here today that can talk about, you know, mitigation to what they're doing with industry. But I think that's the most important thing. And it services both OCONUS and CONUS moves. And then I'll just phone a friend with Mr. Candler's here. He works for me. He'll talk about Army to the specificity the SMA was expecting of me, the convenience claims, right? The inconvenience claims and what we've done to increase those for inconvenience that's based on the mover, the shipping company, not doing their part. And so we're holding industry accountable. Transcom's helping us with that. And we're doing so in both organic Army inconvenience claims process and then transportation, you know, the transportation service provider in inconvenience claims process. So Derek, if you're here, can you just help me with the details on the inconvenience claims?
Yes, sir. One of the things I'd like to mention is, and you know, I'm really surprised that we haven't made this available to a lot of people. Inconvenience claims. You know, we negotiate a time point from the point of pickup to the time of delivery. So let's say, for instance, there's a report not later than date that moving company is responsible for providing your goods. If that moving company does not provide your goods by that report not later than date, then you are entitled to an inconvenience claim. So what is an inconvenience claim? So we pay per diem, not to include lodging. So for the first 7 days, you get per diem allowance for any time that exceeds the delivery point or delivery time. Now, for instance, if, let's say after that 7 days, you come out of pocket and it's more than the per diem cost, you can provide a list of items that you have paid for, and that moving company will reimburse you for that amount. And that's to help you to defray some of the costs for the moving company not meeting the time standard. I'll pass it over to Transcom.
Yeah, go ahead. Wait, Transcom, just hold a second. We got a force.
So, Madam Secretary Chief, I think to put a final point on what was just talked about, in terms of magnitude, 2,500 plus claims for convenience at $1.37 million that we've paid out to soldiers. So understanding this program, understanding that we're holding the carriers accountable and there is a process to get reimbursed, I think is critical. Then the long-term approach that Transcom will talk about here is that over the next 18 to 24 months, they're going to revamp the contract. Now, it already is, as Dwayne Gamble talked about, a stressed industry. As that changes and us will Transcom will adjust the contract to better be more responsive. And then the second contract they're going to adjust is the software program, DPS, because as we all know, it's very, very difficult to work your way through that, very difficult to maneuver, and quite frankly, it's not as responsive as it should be. So that's a long-term approach, just to put a final point on it.
Yeah, I think it's really important, though, we get this information out. You know, I've only been doing this a little over 40 years. I'm sure, and I never knew about half this stuff. So I think it's really important that, some of these benefits are available to families in tough times. We've got to make sure they know they're available. Because, it's like a while back, we did a good job, with like dislocation allowances. People, it was almost like a hidden thing. If you didn't know the secret, you didn't know how to get one. Whereas, it's a benefit you should be getting. So, Transcom.
Yes, sir. As many of you know, I'm an Air Force officer. I'm the new director of the Defense Personal Property Management Office, so I'm not an Air Force spy. Along those lines, just like I said, I was going to quote some of the same numbers, but I won't repeat them. But what I would ask for is your help. One is make certain that people do those inconvenience claims. Because if you don't, it doesn't put pressure on industry to deliver. And like they announced this year alone, $1.3 to $4 million to the Department alone, about $3.7 million to the entire Department of Defense. So please follow through with the paperwork. At the same time, as we talk to industry and try to get an idea of, hey, is this going away? Is this going to get better? They'll tell us that next year is going to be slightly better, but really the key emphasis is on that slightly better. It's really going to be a very similar environment to what we're in now. And I would encourage you to watch the news. I would encourage you to pay attention to what's going on. You'll hear various news articles, various things talking about labor shortages, talking about the ports at Long Beach and Los Angeles and how there's delays there. Whether it's, just go to your commissary. I know I'm at Scott Air Force Base, and you go to the commissary and they say, hey, take one thing of chicken each because supply problems. My wife goes to the BX and will say, hey, whatever her favorite item is just isn't there this week. So very similar problem across all sorts of industries. When you see those other problems get solved, you'll probably see the household goods situation get solved. When you see those other problems continue to struggle across other industries, you'll see it continue to struggle across the moving industry as well. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that goes into a wider range. We do letters of warning that kind of tells industry, hey, we found you at fault for a particular thing. And if there's enough that add up in a particular area, a particular trend, we'll do a letter of suspension, which then suspends them for 30 days to once again kind of financially incentivize them to perform to a certain standard. And then in some cases, instead of just doing a 30-day suspension, we'll do a non-use where we just say, hey, you're not going to be used until this particular thing gets solved. In the last year alone, we've had about 1,500 letters of suspension, and we've had about 313 situations of non-use. So basically, those that continue to perform and do well, we'll keep going back to them again and again and again because they're performing well, and those that don't will hurt incentive financially.
I got a question on the moves. Just to make this is for the family. So okay, so I gotta be someplace. Let's just say 1 December. That's the date I have to report. You go to travel. You try to make and the movers won't give you a date where you have to be there. So what they do is you will deliver, but it's going to be in February. But you have to be there 1 December. So how does that work with this inconvenience thing? Because they could just say, hey, we're not going to deliver to February. Or can they do that? Or how does that work?
So just like everybody else, Colonel Smith, if I step out in the left lane, feel free to jump in and correct me. But when it comes time to depart, you put in a departure date, right. And we build into the rules of 7 days ago to set up your departure date. And then, of course, based on the distance and you're moving, there's time to get you there. So you should be able to figure out, if you're going one state away, that's one thing different than going to the United States to choose. But you should be able to figure out based on when you depart to when your things should be there. Yes, sir.
And then on this, Chief, and on the order side, if you're trying to pack your household goods and they don't show and you have a report date and you scheduled it, and we've had this problem this summer too, it's like, okay, I'm scheduling my household goods on 1 December, and then they don't show, and you got a report date at 10 December. We did say in the orders that you get 20 days past your report date or is it 30?
20 days starting off, so we can negotiate more. 30 days before report date, 20 days after, we can push it to the right based off of situation.
Yeah, okay. I was just looking at the guy behind you, say, hey, I had 30 fingers up, so I was, trying to read the hand and arm signals up here, sorry. So, yeah.
One last point, Chief. You asked about how we get the word out. One way we are working multiple avenues. Within the last 2 years, and I just encourage all the families to download it. It's on the App Store. It's an Army PCS app. It's informational. We put that out within the last 2 years. And then this year, we added a 24/7 live chat feature. So if you don't see the information that you require, whether it's an inconvenience claim, you can search it. It'll take you to essentially what would be in an Army regulation if we had an Army regulation for PCS moves. We've been reliant for decades on the defense travel regulation. Mr. Candler and Gene Thomas sitting next to him are two heroes that are carrying the weight for the Army. They are developing an Army regulation for PCS moves. That'll be out, we hope, in the next year. But the kind of the intermediate step is this PCS app. It's informational in nature. It has all the information that you didn't have access to before, quite candidly, from an Army source. Now it's on the Army PCS app, and again, we create this live chat feature. So if you have an issue and it's not directly addressed in this informational app, then please just chat us up, and a human being will interface with you right on this app.
I put one more thing, and I ask everybody in the room, online, please not do unnatural acts. It goes back to what we're saying. Don't wait and just ask for help. I mean, we've heard it all, and at one spouse forum, it's like my husband just PCS, and our household goods are 20 days later, and he's already at the new duty station. And we didn't know, because we just got great soldiers. We really do. And they're like, I'm going to get this mission done. I don't care. Why figure it out with household goods? See you later. And there's the kids. So I'd ask, if you're going through that, base leaders would see that happening. That's number one. But please just say, hey, it's extraordinary times. The movers didn't come. So can we make it even further than 20 days? We can do all that. We can't do it all if we just don't know. So I would just, if you're struggling, you don't have to struggle with it, whatever this is, by yourself. And I've seen a lot of great leaders just go through these things, and they'll get there and they'll get to that assignment. They're going to do it, and their family's back there, and then it's like, I hate the Army. So we don't need to do that. That's one thing I'd ask.
Going back to the inconvenience claim, one of the things that has been a little bit frustrating trying to figure out with the inconvenience claim, it doesn't seem to be really black and white. It seems that the moving company may have the ability to make decisions on what's approved and what's not approved as far as what's going to be reimbursed. So there's guidance out there. You can find articles that kind of say, well, they'll reimburse you for renting a washing machine and dryer or XYZ, but it's just guidance in articles. I can't find anything that's just black and white. What is it that they will pay? What is it that they won't pay? So for the 7 days, they'll pay per diem for my spouse. That's great. That's very cut and dry, black and white. So I know what that's going to look like. After that, I provide them with receipts. Okay, well, good. Laundry, I don't have receipts for laundry. Are they going to pay for my laundry, or are they not going to pay for my laundry? So for some of our younger enlisted families, I think it would be really beneficial for a very black and white list to say these are the things that will be covered as far as the inconvenience claim is concerned. One of the examples I gave earlier today to someone was vacuuming my floor. We've been in our house for a few weeks now, and I need to vacuum my carpet. So are they going to pay for a vacuum cleaner? I don't know. So I don't want to go buy a vacuum cleaner because I have a really nice vacuum cleaner. But I will buy a cheap vacuum cleaner from Walmart if that's going to cover it, so that I can go ahead and vacuum my carpet because of sanitary reasons. I think it's really disgusting that I'm taking a broom to my carpet to try to get, anything in there. But it's just not a black and white list, and I don't think that that's fair. So inconvenience claims are great, but not knowing the specifics is making it a little bit challenging.
Okay, Billy, that says a lot about you, man. I'm just letting you know.
Okay, questions from the audience? Krista, if we don't have another. Krista?
Thank you. So since 2018, I've been on the Army's Survivor Advisory Working Group, and I've had an inside look at just the incredible work that the Army has been doing. Not obviously since way before I got there, and just the pages and pages of accomplishments that the Army has supported and advocated for to support our survivors, and I appreciate that very much. One of the things that we talk about is education and educating our soldiers and families in the event this does happen in their family. And I talk to spouses about the DD-93, and generally our spouses don't know about the DD-93 and personal affairs worksheets and such. So are we doing anything to make sure that our soldiers and families are aware that it's important to have those conversations, those important and difficult conversations, to really set their family up for success? Because I don't think a lot of families when my husband passed, a lot of his friends, a lot of the soldiers didn't realize that we received monthly benefits like survivor benefit pension, the dependent indemnity compensation and such. So I think that it would really encourage families to have those conversations if they knew they had something really important to talk about.
Hey, thank you, Chris. That's a good question. And working with my battle buddy up on the podium there, I have the Casualty Assistance Program as well. We work very closely with the Survivor Work Group, as you explained. And I looked at it early on and had some gaps to fix, so we have done that. One, professionalizing our casualty assistance force, whether it's military or civilian, tends to be green suiters at this time, and putting the human in HRC when they work with the families. Educating them on the updated policies, educating them on the benefits that the family needs, and walking that family, just like they're part of your family, from the very beginning to the end, and most importantly, staying in touch with you after that process is complete, to bring complete closure. I'm sure you could probably call somebody today that helped you back then, and my commitment to you is that they'll be available for you.
And
Yeah, I think we also do, we still do ACS classes on Army 101 so that we say this is a LES, this is how you access it, because it goes even further back. Before something really bad happens, you still have to know these things that happen in the Army. And these programs are available through the Army Community Services where you can say, and I still remember my wife attending one of those classes and saying, this is Army. They're going to say these acronyms. You have no idea what they're saying. And there's different levels. That's still a program, right? I just make sure I get that right.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is, which, Sergeant Major and I have been working on, and really with the leadership is, we talk about this is my squad of building these cohesive teams. You have young soldiers and young families and really try to connect them inside an organization. Like we use an example of the Golden Triangle, where every soldier has a family member, and the squad, whoever that leader is, they know who the family is. Every soldier has a buddy that cares about them, and they're all kind of connected in a way. Something's going on, and this is what we're trying to do without impeding on people's privacy. But how do you start to have that if you're a squad leader and you want to try to connect the spouse, or you want to connect the family to that soldier? When I was in the 101st, we basically ordered people, you will call every spouse, you'll go visit them, or at least you'll ask to do that, so there was some type of connection made. And one way of doing it is just taking the 93 and the forms out and saying, hey, come on in, Joe or Mary, let me take a look at your forms. Hey, wait a minute, this is who's this, and if you don't have the expertise, I'm going to just call this number, because this is the next of kin call. I just want to make sure we got a good number, and you can make that call. Because as you know, a lot of times we don't even have the right number. We don't even have the right people. And as those who are involved in these things, if you don't have the right people, the right numbers, at our level, we see catastrophic instances where it's not very good. So the more we can do to tie people, to build this team, it seems kind of, I don't know, soft, whatever, but to build that cohesive team where people actually know they're soldiers, they know the families, and then if something's going wrong, whether it's domestic, hey, what's going on? Joe or Mary's having a rough time, or whether it's behavioral health issue or it's a domestic issue. They feel comfortable actually calling. And there's buddies there that care about them. And you bring all this thing together, so when these things happen, all the information's there. We just got to figure out how do we actually institutionalize that or operationalize that so people actually do those type things. Because people find out the hard, again, at our level, Sergeant Major, we see, when you get 1 million people, these things, we see all the worst ones come to our level, and we really have to get out in front, like you said. So, anything on that, Sergeant Major?
No, it just really is. And I'm going to tell you the story, and you're not going to believe it. So I pulled all the DD Form 93s in the office of the Sergeant Major of the Army, and the first number I called was incorrect. And I was just like, really? It's like, this is first of all, I got a 42 Alpha that could fix it, and we did. But that's just it. It's like, we all have to do it. Don't think for a second that I'm good. I did. I really thought, of course, all of mine are going to be right. And like, oh, that's the wrong number. So those little things, we don't just talk about it. We really have to do it. I mean, we have to know these things exist. Those are programs that teach our spouses, this is what this looks like. You have to know that exists. You have to know your people, and then you have to know that there's a program. And if you don't know, and you just question it, go, oh, there's no way, but I don't know. But don't give up and say, yep, we don't do that, or we don't have a program. And then you might find out we already have one and you just didn't know it. But a lot of times we'll go, yep, I don't know that, so therefore it doesn't exist. I'd ask, again, it's about being a good leader. If you feel like something is wrong, dig in, find out, is there an Army program that already exists? And if there isn't, there are ways that you can bring these things up. And a lot of things come up through the Family Action Program. It's alive and well. We get to take on those really hard things. We look at it every 6 months. Some of those things have been in there for, feels like 10 years, I think literally. But it's legislative. So question it. If it's not a program of record, then get that up to us. And if it's, we can afford to do it, we're going to do it.
Question from an audience? We'll take one from Facebook. Spouse employment question from Graham Floyd from Facebook. Please fix one problem area for spouses, joint bases that code spousal hiring preference jobs to specific service branches. For example, the spouse of a soldier serving on an Air Force base is ineligible for spousal hiring preference. Now,
wow.
Chief, we can take that.
I don't think I'm aware of that one.
We could take that one.
Who wants to take that one?
Sorry, we can take that one in a G9 as part of the JBOS process.
No,
we
but
can work with AMC.
That's the thing. There's someone that knows the answer. The other thing too is don't be afraid to say you don't know. I do not know. I have no idea. But there's someone here that's either.
So we got that. We meet with the other services during the joint management oversight process for joint bases. This is an issue we can take to.
Has anyone ever heard of that before?
JMOS process?
No, the idea that you joint base can have a service.
No, sir, this is a first that I've heard.
Okay.
Sir, military spouse preference is an OPM rule. Ooh. So if we have a local civilian hiring office that is prioritizing one spouse over another, then it's a local problem. I think we have the proper policy and law in place for military spouses, and I think perhaps people aren't following those rules. So I would go back to the Facebook gal that wrote that and say, you need to march into that civilian human resource office. Right. And ask some questions and perhaps provide them the OPM role.
Yeah, we might be able to help them with
that. And let us know who you are, and we can help.
But that's where the chain of command can help too, because sometimes our young spouses will march. They don't march. They walk in and they don't even get through the door. But if someone of more rank walks, the sergeant major comes in with them, or someone comes in with them, they get in the door, and all of a sudden the problems seems to go. It happens with me a lot. I get questions, and I just go, "Hey, take a look at this," and then the next day it's solved. So it's pretty good. I try to work.
Chief, that's shocking.
All right, another Facebook question. No one from the audience. Okay, this one is from Austin Carrick on Facebook. A recent report released shows the National Capital Region is cutting behavioral health billets while we are under a national shortage of behavioral health providers. What is being done to make sure Army families have appropriate access to medical care within the 28-day standard of care?
I would say, again, as I said earlier, one of the challenges we have is that there is a nationwide behavioral health provider shortage. And so we are trying to work that. I personally would like to see us, work with some of the medical professional associations to try to see what we can do on the front end of that pipeline, although I understand there's some complexities with doing that. But I think I would ask the Surgeon General maybe to see if you can address the specifics of the NCR region here.
Got a mic?
Yeah, we got a mic coming around.
Mic over here for General Dingle.
So, Madam Secretary, you're absolutely right. There is a shortage in behavioral health providers. However, in the NCR, the Defense Health Agency is doing a 703 or an assessment relook of services provided. The DHA is not cutting billets. The services, we own billets, but right now we work with the DHA in the NCR providing professionals. If a service has cut behavioral health providers and removed them from the NCR, that's on the service. The Army is not doing that. The chief has given me guidance to make sure that readiness is first and that we are taking care of our soldiers, families, and beneficiaries. As we do that, we are working with the Defense Health Agency, who has the control lever on what services are provided in the NCR. We'll continue to work with them to make sure that the behavioral health care is provided. However, they are conducting an assessment, and what the future looks like will be a DHA call on what's provided.
Okay, we've got a little less than 5 minutes left. I think we got time for one more question. Anyone in the audience? Okay, if not, I'll go to this question came from the internet. I believe it's a G1 question. It's about from Christopher Richardson. The Army substance abuse program is outdated and has not improved since the 1980s. There are quicker and more efficient methods today. No other American corporation places the entire drug screening on the supervisor, in parentheses, commander. Has there been any discussion on how we can help commanders with testing soldiers in the 21st century?
I'm not aware of that. We've got that under review, but G1.
Well, just what Sergeant Major did say. In part of the prevention space that we will get better at, that is under review. I acknowledge that the policy is a bit dated, but also acknowledge we have some technologies and systems out there that we can improve it upon. So I will take that on personally.
Okay, I think we have culminated. We will go to the senior leaders for their closing remarks. Madam Secretary.
Well, I would just like to thank everyone here again, as well as everyone in the virtual world on Facebook Live and other platforms for joining us. It is so helpful for us to hear directly from families about what the concerns are, whether they're very specific concerns, and I hope that there are some very specific concerns and cases here that we're going to be able to follow up on and help with in short order, or whether it's exposing some of these, broader policy issues, whether it's the fact that perhaps our drug screening, policies are dated, or things that are, more like going back to the marijuana question about how we have policies at the national level that are changing. Just really, really helpful for us to get this kind of feedback and value the opportunity to hear directly from you. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
I just want to say thanks. Some great questions, and every time we do this, I learn more and more about our Army, and I just ask for our families is if you're having a problem with something, bring it up through the chain of command, get it up to us. It could be policy, it could be just execution at a certain level, but one thing I've learned, we have a program just about for everything in the Army. We don't necessarily link up the program with the people. We don't have maybe getting it right, but there's a lot of people that are working hard to take care of families, and we want to just make sure we're doing that. And when we're not, we want to change our procedures. We are a bureaucracy. We know that. But if we get it to the right leaders, you get the right expertise, we can fix the problem. That's what we want to do.
I just say, like I opened, just say thank you to all the family members and all that you have done to support your soldier for years and years and years, and I promise you there's no way I probably wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for my wife and what she's done to support me and my family, and I just can't thank all the families enough, so thank you.
Just an admin note, the Surgeon General, General Dingle, will remain here up front for any issues, concerns, or questions. He had me make that announcement. I didn't make that for him. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our Army seniors a round of applause. Holly, back to you.